Hi guys, welcome to the May Bradford Clouds user group. Tonight we've got Johan talking about GitHub and MCPs. So Johan, over to you, and I'll let you do your introduction.
Thank you very much, everyone. My name is Johan Meiberg. I'm a technical trainer with the Worldwide Learning team here from Microsoft in the UK. Basically, do technical training for a living. Originally from South Africa, but I live here in the UK now. And I've got my contact details up there. And I'm very excited to be presenting something pretty interesting and cool, I guess, to the user group this month. I'm going to go through a brief agenda here. I've totally plagiarized this from some of our other content and other slides that we've got. And you'll see to this end, we've got basically we'll talk first about the evolution of the GitHub Copilot, how that's basically started out. I'm going to do a couple of demos. Then we'll talk about the coding agent and the agent mode around that, right? And then we will look at a little bit about behind the scenes around what this is doing for Microsoft. And then we'll talk a little bit about some of the tips about Copilot when using the coding agent. And then we'll end off with a bit of a recap. I think that's pretty much what we'll do. So please, if you have any questions during this time, I'm more than happy to be taking questions. You can interrupt me at any given time. All right, so as you might have seen, GitHub Copilot agent is now available, right? And this is something that we've been playing around in dev and test for some time. And this is also something that we are actually dog fooding with our own team. So the team that develops that develops our Visual Studio Code tooling and all the tooling around that is essentially using this tool themselves. Now, there is obviously a bit of an evolution because the reality is the time has changed since the first time we wanted to start building some of this automation and large language capabilities into our development tools. So and to this end, we originally started with code generation largely, where we were generating code, and all of this actually started with what was the next few lines of code where I would be typing in the IDE, and suddenly there will be almost like ghosted text appear in front of my editor, and I will then just press the tab button and it completes that for me, right? You will see here that the frequency of interaction that the models they have with your code interface is hundreds of milliseconds, right? Every couple of milliseconds, it's looking, validating, and checking what it is doing. The reason why we are talking here about whether this is on the inner or the outer loop, the inner loop is predominantly the developer and everything that touches the developer. The outer loop is essentially where that developer starts interacting and integrating with other developers, and it becomes more of a team exercise. Oopsie. So with code generation, we were predominantly dealing with that inner loop, helping the developer directly, but I'm helping the individual person there. I'm not necessarily helping the team. Following on this, also more along the code generation side of things, we added on top of completions, we started adding chat and we started adding edits, right? Where I can essentially start having a conversation, a chatbot-like conversation inside the IDE or wherever I'm having the conversation for that matter. And that culminated into multi-line and even multi-file edits, right? The ability for me to have a conversation and then eventually the model is essentially able to integrate into Visual Studio Code in such a way that it knows it can edit multiple files. It's cognizant of what is happening inside my folder structure, my workspace structure. The frequency of interaction here is typically seconds, right? Because as opposed to typing something and waiting for autocomplete, which really needs to be completely contextual, otherwise autocomplete won't work, of course, versus me having a conversation and asking it possibly about a controller or something like that, that is not going to be something that happens every millisecond, right? Rather, that's a longer type of cadence, because it takes seconds for the model possibly to read my content, read my source code, interpret something, and come up with some sort of a plan regarding that. And the reality is, on top of all of this, where if you look at the SWE or SWE work bench, where they were really talking about the model scores in terms of how much can these models actually contribute. If we look at where we were just a year ago, we were looking at 20%. Right now, just in 1 year's time, we've gone to 70%. And this is really the difference that we went through from how can the model help us to achieve our goals versus now the model can be contributing up to 70% and have a success factor around 70% of the code that it's writing, right? So we've got our tooling to a point where the model can contribute a lot more, and that's actually exciting. And because of that, of course, what we are moving towards, and as we always like to say, the future is agentic. Starting to like that term a little bit, because you'll notice here we've got the agent mode, and the agent mode, folks, manifests in several different ways, and I'll see if I can demonstrate all of that, and then we can let it go and hammer away at a problem we give to it, right, and see some tests. So in agent mode, the frequency of interaction and that cadence becomes minutes, because at this point in time, what we can tell it is, we can tell it, I want to refactor this code. You can actually tell it something like, hang on, I want you to replace the Node.js application with a Java application. Those are the kind of changes and tasks that we can give to them, and that inherently is going to take a little bit longer. Again, we're dealing with all of these predominantly with the inner loop around that. So we're essentially dealing with the individual users. There you can see this is the agent mode, and I'll show you a demo of this. And in the agent mode, I will definitely do a demo around this as well. But in the agent mode, you can see they implement card validation methods, or and got some sort of instruction. And you'll notice that it's actually reading a bunch of different files, and based on the current files that it's got there, it's recommending some changes, right? And I'm not going to drain the whole video, possibly. Well, we might actually look at this. You'll notice as it's busy making changes, it's actually running npm lint. It's running npm test commands. It's actually monitoring the output here of those commands on the console. And as those commands actually indicate success or indicate errors, the agent is cognizant of it. And to be honest with you, I've seen so far that I've had it execute a command on my Visual Studio Code console. It didn't get it right. I saw it try another type of command, add some quotes, didn't get it right. Eventually, he had tried 4 different commands. The 4th command actually worked, and it said, "Oh, happy days, let's continue." So if you're looking for a peer programmer that literally is tireless, this is exactly what we're looking at. So now we're moving on from an agent mode type capability. We're moving towards a Copilot coding agent, and as opposed to just a mode where I can interact with these models, now we've got an agent, and the agent can essentially go away and do work. And that's really what us developers want to hear. Because up until this point, you will see it's all about the inner loop. And what we mean by that is basically peer programming. And with peer programming, you're getting a little bit more productivity because you've got two two developers writing the code, checking each other's code, validating as they're going on. So you're definitely getting possibly more, more decent quality code, but at the expense of losing a person. So with Copilot, we're essentially getting peer programming, and that gives us quality programming, but it's still just helping the individual person. Now, what we are doing with Copilot Coding Agent and our agent framework around this is we can assign entire issues to the model. And I'll show this to you in a few minutes, where essentially a task can take quite a long time to actually execute and run. This relates to the outer loop. And what we mean by that is this time we're not just helping the individual developer, because you'll notice if I'm using this coding agent and it does its job, it will not allow me, who asked it to do the work, to approve the work. It needs to have someone else approve that work. I cannot approve my own work, which is very common in DevOps circles, right? So there you can see Copilot Coding Agent, right? And it's touching the outer loop. And this is available on github.com, but it's also available in a couple of other areas. And I'll show you how you can access some of these options. All right, but first let's head over to a bit of a demo there. I'm going to point out a repo that I created. And just to give you some sort of an idea, if I go to my settings inside of GitHub, I hope everyone can see here. I'll bump the font slightly. You will notice that I've got a Copilot section right at the bottom there. And the Copilot section has got some features, and then it's got the coding agent. This is preview. You might not see this. I've possibly got access to this because I work for Microsoft. I'm not even sure. All right. But if I click on the Copilot option, you'll see that there are some settings for Copilot in the IDE. There are some settings for Copilot in this, well, there is some documentation around the IDE, the CLI, GitHub mobile chat, Copilot in github.com, and then some additional features. And if I scroll down this feature list, you will see we've got a variety of different features. Copilot from the CLI. There's a CLI tool specifically for managing GitHub. That's, you can use that. There you can see Copilot chat in the IDE. Copilot can search the web, for example. Some of these might be enabled or they're not. And then you can also see we've got some of the Anthropic and other Google Gemini, some of the models coming through here that I can either enable or disable should I want to do some of those things. And towards the bottom here, you will see whether, whether I allow MCP servers, a little bit more on that. MCP servers, you might have heard a lot about that over the last week with Build. MCP servers is a specific type of service you can implement that brings you that retrieval augmented generation capabilities. So as opposed to, like for example, with our Office 365 Copilot tool that accesses your Microsoft Graph data and Outlook and SharePoint type data, with one of these MCP servers, we can essentially hook up your GitHub Copilot with virtually any type of backend data that you've got. So it's almost like a bring your own data type capability. All right, so there are some settings here, and then you'll notice for the agent specifically, you will notice that I can specify that I want to be using the coding agent on more than one type of repository. All right, so this is essentially my repo. My repo in GitHub, and to this end, I've got this repo already cloned to my local folder structure here. You will notice that I've got a source folder there, and the source folder is really just a README file, and I'm going to have some projects in there. The reason I want to show this to you is because right now, of course, all of this is empty, all right? And that's kind of the point. Now, what I've done here is I've got a README file, but you'll notice part of what we can do is we can actually set up a Copilot instructions markdown file that we can put in a .github folder, and Copilot will then be keeping this in mind, and it'll be reading this file and sending this file into the model every time it sends a prompt. All right, so this is nice to have. You can click on this and you can see there that if I preview, this is a full stack web app with ASP.NET front end and a Node.js function app for the back end. You can see there's my folder structure and there's the different tasks that I want to do. Now you'll notice that this is basically tasks, but nothing is stopping me from actually dumping a lot of text in here that I can actually hand over to the model, and the model will be cognizant of this, because that's really what we need, right? We want to be able to ask it questions and give it instructions alongside with it keeping in mind what my bigger picture is. And that's exactly what these instructions can do. All right, so what I've got here is I've got this folder structure as I indicated. There's my instructions. And on the far right-hand side, you will see I've got the context. So the first option is ask. All right, so I can ask it questions here if I wanted to. What I really want to do is I really want to choose the model I want to be using. Right, I'm quite happy with this with this model. It has served me really well. And I'm going to say, looking at the markdown file in .github, my plan is to write a front-end web app and a back-end function app. I've made a lot of typos there. I don't really care, to be fair, right? so I'm going to just remove some of the typos, and you'll see to this end, I'm busy asking at this point in time. I want to change that, and I actually want to say, agent, I want you to do something with this. So I'm going to hit the OK button here. And what it's going to do here is it's essentially going to look at my instructions, right? Augment my instructions with the markdown file that I've indicated. And actually don't have to do that. The model will do, the service will do that itself, right? That's baked into the Copilot, that Copilot instructions markdown file. And then you can see there, it's about to start creating this directory structure. And there you can see there, it's actually starting to execute some of these things. There we go. It's actually going to starting to execute certain commands, and there you can see it's there's the command for creating the new Aspire solution. Creating that now. I'm just going to scaffold everything together quickly. That's just the solution file. And then you can see for the front end folder, it's essentially creating a new web app in the front end folder. So if I go to the front end, you'll see there's a web app starting to get created there. If there was an error on the command line here, it would effectively troubleshoot the error until it can fix the error, even if it has to remove certain files. All right. There you can see it says, all right, let's create the Node.js application. First, it says npm install G Azure Functions Core Tools. It's prompting me to install the core tools that are going to require to create an npm application. So not only is it, and in actual fact, if I was questioning that, it will say, yes, you are right. Let's check if you've already got it installed, because I might at any point in time just hit the stop button and tell it, hang on, I think you're going off on a bit of a tangent here. Right. I'm not sure from a timing perspective if it's actually worth waiting for all of this to finish. We'll give it a few minutes. I'm not sure how big this thing is to actually install. And of course, what it's doing is it's monitoring the console output, right? So not only is it understanding what to go and install, but it's monitoring that console output. We'll give this a little bit of time to go and do its thing. And then eventually what I'll do is I'll eventually push this over onto the GitHub environment. There we go. There's at least some action. And now it's going to create a function project in the function backend folder. I didn't realize that it needed the Azure Function Core tools for that, because I've been using I've actually had the Function Core tools installed already, so it's a bit of a weird one that it actually installed that. Of course, before I click on accept and submit the command, I can actually stop and say, hang on, don't you want to check if it's already installed? And then it always makes you sound really clever. It always says something like, you are absolutely right. Let's check, as if it's this epiphany sort of thing. But yes, something that you can do is you can go to this Copilot instructions file, and right at the bottom here, you can do something like this. Always check before you install stuff. Right? You can add instructions like this, and that's really the whole idea of having this file. And I'm sure eventually Microsoft will tweak the system message to get to a point where you won't have to say things like that. But that's certainly part of the idea, is that you tweak it and eventually get it to do more or less and run more or less how you want it to run. Talking about running, it doesn't seem to be running a lot at this point in time. So I'll give it another couple of seconds here. So it's actually creating and scaffolding the backend project now. I assume it's going to be downloading some options. Here we go. There's my node modules. And you can see that there's my source functions. It's going to add a new HTTP trigger function, which of course is what I'll need to be able to communicate from the front end to the back end, right? It has to get exposed via HTTP endpoint. Now, I can, if I wanted to, right in the middle of this exercise, if I'm not getting the joy I want out of that model, I can flip over to another model. What we've done is this model is completely abstracted. We are using something like the semantic kernel here, and your message history will continue to stay relevant even if you change models right in the middle. Right, so it looks like it's done that, and now it says, let's update the get data function to return some sample data. It's even thinking of that, and what you will see here is that it's busy modifying this file. It's adding some sample data, and then I can click on the keep button. It's picking up that I'm iterating, and I'm not 100% sure if I've walked to fetch a coffee and if it must continue. So I'm going to click on the continue button, continue to iterate, and then it's also going to create a new in-unit project in the test folder. There we go. There's the test folder, and you'll see there's a in-unit test option. All right. So now at this point, it's created the back end. It's created the front end. My Aspire defaults and host are not created yet. I've created my test applications. And then you can see there's now, for example, Copilot, right? It's not the actual pilot. So take a look at this. It wants to create a new web application. I'm going to tell it now, hang on. That should be an Aspire host template, not a web app. I've often felt like oh my word, should be an Aspire host app, not web app. I often feel like telling it exactly how I feel about it, because it does sometimes go off on a bit of a tangent, and there we go. You're totally right. Yes, I know I'm right. That's why I'm not the co-pilot. But you can see there, and in actual fact, at this point in time, if it wasn't for me wanting to show you that, hey, it knows what to do here, and in fact, I might actually get some better traction from using one of the other models, but it realizes that I need .NET as Aspire, the workload to be able to do that. So it's installing this, the workload. You can see there it's actually already installed. So we shouldn't have to wait. It's reinstalling this whole thing now. I'm also getting a nightly build update here. So sometimes it feels like I'm going 2 steps back and then 1 step forward and then 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Okay, but this Aspire workload is fortunately quite small, so it should be in a few seconds. So the first time I utilized this tool, I was looking to build a backend application with Node.js. I had Node 22 installed. Eventually, I configured an app service to be running Node 20 or another version of Node. And it eventually figured out that I had the wrong version of Node. It prompted me to uninstall Node. It prompted me to reinstall the right version of Node. I installed the right version of Node. Could have probably just changed the version of Node on the app service, but I wanted to test out how flexible it is, and it ended up making the application work, from 0 to hero. All right, so this should not hopefully take too much longer, and then the .NET Aspire workload will be installed on my device, and then we'll continue. Go on. I want to finish this in the IDE first before I go on to show you the agent in the browser. So I'm going to have to get this finished, or finish at least. In fact, I can probably cut that out, stop it, and say I have Aspire. All right. So I have Aspire. I hope it didn't mess an install up there. Okay, so now it's gonna create the host app. There you can see .NET new Aspire host. It's gonna dump it in the Aspire host folder. And then you can see it was using the wrong template type. Very interesting. I have to say, when I demo AI tools like this, it's always very unpredictable what they're going to end up doing. And then you can see it's going to create a service defaults folder. Now, if you're not familiar with Aspire, this might turn into a nice Aspire demo as well. Aspire is essentially a orchestration and scaffolding service that we've built around .NET that will allow you to build and run applications on your developer environment and check to see telemetry information between these devices and between these different services, right? So all the scaffolding required to do certain things. It was trying to create a project folder there in the test folder. There was already a folder, so it actually just ran that with a force command. That's why there was an error. All right, so now you'll see I can add all of these projects to my solution file. All right, it's added to my solution file, which is why it's green there. And then the last option, or a couple of options it has to do now, is it has to create references in the projects to my service defaults. And now it's going to, you can see there, it's going to update the front end to call the backend API. So it's adding some services in the front end. It'll just take a few seconds here. There's going to be some files I'm going to have to accept now. I'm going to end this demo will be done in a few minutes. You don't have to worry. No response was returned. Ah, interesting. I'm going to hit F5 here and see if it actually runs. Or let me go to, well, hang on for a second. I'm going to quit that. And I'm actually going to push this onto my repo. Added all the files. Right, so I'm going to push this onto my main branch and well, commit this, and I'll push this onto my main branch on the server. All right. So I'm not going to sit and wait for the agent to build the whole thing. It might take a little bit more time. I want some other things. I want to cover some other options. So at this point in time, you can see how the developer is saying, how the agent helps me in my developer environment. It's got some control over my IDE as well, and you can see already now, if you're using the new version of Visual Studio, it actually, when you say I want to run it, it doesn't run it from the command line, it runs it in Visual Studio, right? So it's like pressing F5. That's the kind of control we're integrating here. So the idea here is now the next part, right? And the next part is moving to an autonomous agent. So right now, everything I've shown you now was on the agent that sat here on my desktop, right? And it's great and it helps me. Like I said, it's more a peer programmer type thing. I've got some help. I can churn out a lot more code, probably a lot more efficiently using something like that. But what we're really trying to get to, folks, is we're trying to get to an agent that can run when we are not here. And that's exactly what the new Copilot coding agent can do. The Copilot agent, we can give it a task and we can track the progress of the task and eventually review the agent's work. And that's exactly what we're driving towards here. So if I've got my source code back in my code repository, I'm going to hit the refresh option here. So if I go for source, there you can see there's all my projects. All right, so I can go back to my code folder, and on the far right hand side here, I can say I have this folder with all these projects. Can you test and build and get it ready to deploy? Right. So what I'm doing now is I'm moving away from my developer environment and I'm moving into the browser now. And in the browser, I'm saying, hey, Copilot agent, here's a task. Agentic development has come a long way. So yeah, it's a nice little banner there. What it's doing here now is it's coming up and it's saying, all right, how can I solve this problem? It says, you can see I have this project's current behavior. I've got all these projects. You can see there the proposed solution is that, we check these files. They've got all the necessary build components in them. And what I can do is I can tell it, yeah, that looks like a good plan. I might add some items if I wanted to, right? So you can also see that I can go and say, well, this is actually a subsection of that. And I can add some indents. If I'm going to undo that, of course. But from here, I can essentially just click on generate the plan. And to this end, what the agent is going to do is the agent is going to generate an actual plan, show me where it's touching the source code. And further to this, I can now go and select these items and I can say implement these changes once I've checked them out. you know, and I can go and say, yes, I'm quite happy with that. Now, what it will do is it's essentially going to go almost all the way to creating a pull request for me that I can eventually just merge after I've reviewed the code. Right, you can see it's adding a couple of files there on my behalf. All right, now this is one other way to interact with the agent, right? We can give them these tasks and we can see it build out the plan, and from there actually just go and create the pull request. All right. At this point in time, though, I'm just helping the developer. It's still an inner loop type scenario. So I'm still just helping the person that is looking at the screen, right? It's created a pull request now, so I am branching out a little bit more towards the the outer loop sort of scenario, because there's a pull request involved here and things like that. But without me messing around too much, you would have noticed that it's gone and it's actually, there's a couple of commits. And if I go to my pull requests here, let's see, this is actually something that I've actually created. So don't worry too much about that. All right. Go back to my Copilot agent again. All right. So I mentioned that I can actually give it a task here. It'll start and build out these tasks, right? And it'll actually show me some of these options in some of these settings. Now, there's another level that goes beyond this even, and I want to quickly get to that in here. So what we really want to do is we really want to give it a task like I would assign a task to someone else, for example, right? And the way to do that, just be mindful of the time here, would be to go to my issues and to create a new issue, right? Issue, convert node function backend app to C# 8.0. So I'm not just refactoring here, I'm telling it I want to change the node function backend to that. And in here, of course, I can go and I've got a backend and a front-end application. The backend is a Node.js function application. The front-end is a ASP.NET web app. All of this is orchestrated by a Aspire orchestration host and a Aspire service defaults project. I do want the backend function Node.js application to actually be changed to a C# application. So some of the tasks here would probably be to remove the folder or the content of the folder for the backend application, replace that with a new C# project file, function project application. So you might use the function tools for that, and then wire it up to my Aspire orchestration and wire it up to the web frontend. All right. So here we go. There's a new issue, right? I'm going to hit the create button here. So check this out. If I go to my issues here, all I actually have to do is go and assign this to the Copilot. Now we're touching the outer loop, right? Because now Copilot is going to guess what it's going to do. Copilot is going to actually spin up a GitHub runner, which we use for GitHub Actions, and it'll actually spin up a development environment on a GitHub runner, like an agent that does builds, and it'll essentially start working on the problem there as an autonomous independent agent. It will do that work on a branch that gets created for us for the agent. So the agent is not going to start working on your branches and start committing on branches that triggers your CI/CD. It will work on a branch so that someone can check out the branch look at the changes that are proposed and merge those changes if they are fitting for the scenario that you are creating. So you might notice that there's a convert node function backend. That's a pull request. Thanks for asking me to assist with this. Very, very formal. Convert node function. You can see there, you can make blah, blah, blah. Node changes. Pull request is still a work in progress. Will take some time. So we'll give it some time. It's going to iterate, and it will keep iterating until it's actually good to go. And eventually this pull request will be ready for me to essentially just start merging. Right, so you'll find that it will effectively go and add a couple of commits, and eventually when it's ready and good to go, that pull request will be ready for me to just go and review and commit, and it's taken over that part of the project for me. So how can we trigger work and assign work to this Copilot? Well, we can do this from GitHub, as you saw earlier, right? I can just trigger it from GitHub with that instruction. I can use GitHub Mobile by essentially creating a new issue or a new feature on my GitHub repo, and essentially just assign it to the Copilot, and the Copilot will immediately start working on that task on the back end. I can do this from the GitHub CLI, and I can also do this in an ad hoc Copilot chat. So I can say, for example, something like this at Copilot. It's not going to work here. Open a pull request to, and just tell it exactly what I wanted to do. So this is actually something that I can essentially just add onto the Copilot, and it'll actually open a pull request to go and do some of that work. And then there are some steps here around how to do this actually from the GitHub Mobile, but you can see there I'm really just assigning it to someone, and that's all we have to do. Assign it to Copilot, and Copilot will start spinning up an agent and start working on that problem immediately. I want to crack on here and just outline another couple of slides. The agent runs in GitHub Actions, and we thought this was the logical thing to do because some developers are already doing some work with GitHub Actions. They've already customized some GitHub Actions. GitHub Actions is a customizable framework. So we thought, well, if your development is happening and your CI/CD is happening on GitHub Actions, it might actually make sense to be running the agent on GitHub Actions. So the autonomous agent that's just going to go off and do the work essentially runs as a GitHub runner, as GitHub Actions. And that allows you to bring in your GitHub Actions to set up the environment for this developer space to be secure and to be customized to your own requirements. The GitHub agent understands your context. So the first thing we did is we gave it access to the GitHub semantic and lexical search. So as opposed to every time when you are executing a command in Visual Studio Code, for example, as opposed to taking your repo content and passing that repo content over to the prompt, we can just do retrieval augmented generation against the semantic search, and that allows the Copilot to generate the content alongside your content, very similar to Copilot generates your email lists and things like that. So that's where it gets its context from, but you can also bring outside context with MCP service. Model Context Protocol. This is essentially a formal name for a RAG implementation. It's basically an application server for RAG, if you want to see it like that. And MCP servers are essentially configuration that you can add to to let the model respond to you in your development environment based on the own data that you might want to bring to the party. So for example, you might have some Terraform, infrastructure as code. You can bring that Terraform index into the model, so it understands exactly how your infrastructure is deployed, and it might customize your code based on some of those parameters that you got in your infrastructure. It also safeguards quite extensively, right? It's limited to read only. It can only push to its own branch. There's no ways that it can push to any of your other branches. So it will create a branch and it will push to that branch. That's its boundary. We also don't really allow it to just communicate out everywhere. There's essentially a set list of websites that we can access through the Copilot, and then there's certain sites and content we don't allow. But if that doesn't work for you, you've got actually some control over the agent, and you can set it up and you can essentially whitelist certain sites that you might want to be using as part of your agent development. Of course, you want to review the agent's work before you run any workflow actions. If you find the agent's doing something and someone merges a pull request without checking code, something ends up maybe in production or in UAT that shouldn't be in those environments. And then the assigner cannot approve Copilot created PRs. I alluded to this earlier. If I tell the Copilot to build a feature, it builds a feature and integrates that with a merge. I'm not going to be able to approve that merge. Someone else has to approve that merge. So we try to adhere to good coding standards around all of these. And then I've got a couple of stats here. I know I'm running quite low on time. Project Padawan was called initially. I've got some cool stats here. In the Visual Studio Copilot team, the Copilot agent is ranked 5th in terms of commits. So the Copilot is ranked higher than some of the developers on the project. All right, just to give you an idea of where we're sitting. And then you'll notice that there really are we've got some great examples of where, where the Copilot essentially, authored some items. What they've done is they've said that if I instructed the Copilot to be authoring something and it authors something for me, then I will be set as a co-author, right, to the Copilot. So, I guess it's going to come down to things like that. And then addressing things like technical debt. If you can imagine things like feature flags, feature toggles in your code, right? That's boring work. So as opposed to sitting and working on the latest, greatest stuff, you work on those things and you let the model get on with sorting out your menial tasks, right? Those repetitive tasks, right? Re-optimizing this area of the code, sorting out, simplifying, right? Maybe refactoring certain areas, right? Let it get on with those menial tasks in the background, and you can carry on with actually adding capability. And folks, I think I'm getting very close to the last part here. Maybe just a couple of best practices to get the most out of this. Clear and well-scoped issues, right? Make use of that markdown file that you can put in the .github folder as a baseline instruction. We'll send that through to the model every single time we are essentially running a command against the model. So that markdown file can be crucial for keeping the model in line with whatever you want it to be in line with. And then, customize as much as you can. Provide as much context as you can. And then also configure MCP servers for access to additional content. It's really just a question of adding, MCP configuration settings like you might add for different languages and other frameworks if you're interacting with these models. And that immediately brings your own data into your development environment, and you can start developing with your development best practices and other material and content and artifacts that might be relevant. So just a quick recap. yeah, 5 minutes. Peer programmer, not just a pair programmer, a peer programmer now, right? Assigning issues, create pull requests. So really just assign the issues. It is a little bit familiar to what we might have seen in the past, but it is also slightly different in a sense, in that now it can also go and do work without you having to watch it, right? In the past, I would be sitting here watching the agent do stuff, accept things. Now we can basically outsource that work and say to the agent, go off, you've got your own agent runtime, do the work and create a pull request. And that's exactly what we want to be getting to. So yes, don't forget, assign issues to Copilot. It is your newest team member. And that, folks, is pretty much that from my side. I want to thank you and see if there are any questions. I hope that was worth your time.
Very interesting, Johan. Very informative. I've got a quick question for you. From a governance point of view, though, are you guys using this anywhere with any like government organizations, organizations that don't want their data on the internet or anything like that? What kind of challenges, issues are you running into if you are using them in those kind of organizations?
This literally shipped about 2-3 weeks ago, so I don't have any answers for that question, but yeah, so honestly, I wouldn't even be able to guess what the answer is for that.
Yeah, what about Copilot in general, mate? Are you seeing much uptake of that anywhere in like government organizations or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. I've seen some good uptake in Europe. Educational institutions, Imran, I'm not sure where you've seen some uptake, but I've definitely seen some uptake in government departments. NHS is also, I've had some NHS people on some of my Copilot training. So yeah, definitely a bunch of them.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, any questions, folks? Right to you.
There's one in the chat, Johan. It's quite long. You need to read it.
How up to date is it? Excuse me?
There's a question in the chat. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah, look, I'll be honest with you. That is also something that you can probably actually go and check. I'm not 100% sure, but you can go and see Sonnet 3.5, Sonnet 3.7, Gemini 2.5 Pro, GPT 4.1, GPT-04 Mini. These were all built up to a certain point, so it's not that it's using its own model. Each of these models had their own dates and times. Right, does that answer your question, SharePoint Mark?
Hi.
So each of these models were built up to a specific point in time. It's not all the same. It depends what model you choose.
I think for me, the question is, looking at AI a lot, there's a lot of people that probably don't understand that the LLM sort of data is only accurate up to a point in time. So if you, for example, if you used to fire up Copilot in the browser and ask it how up to date is your information, it comes back with October 2023 was the last information there. Unless you then go and ask the relevant tool, whether it be, I don't know about Claude or any of the others on there. I know ChatGPT and I know Copilot, use those a lot. But I've learned over time to always ask it to go and look on the internet for the most recent, latest updates to every question I ask it. So if you don't know that and you're asking it to create you a script based upon what your requirements might be, when it creates that script, how accurate and up to date is that script written to best practice and standards?
Yeah, 100%. I get this quite a lot actually in my training. And my answer usually to this is I actually don't ask it questions. A lot of my peers actually ask it questions. So if they don't know an answer on the training that they are doing, they ask it a question. And they sometimes say, oh, it got the answer wrong. I'm like, you're not supposed to use it like that. Maybe you can use it like that for questions that don't have a time frame like that, but certainly for questions that has a time frame like that, it's not the appropriate tool, clearly, right? So what I do is I rather in my training, as opposed to asking it point questions, which might be out of date, what I do is I use the model what it's good at. I say to it, hey, model, tell me what are the best practices around this service. Tell me what are some use cases around this service. So it's really good at that. The other thing is, because this is development, it's not really anything to do with questions and answers. C# is actually quite stable and consistent, right? Out of everything these models can interact with, source code is probably the most consistent of the lot. It's much more stable and consistent than English and French, right? Which has different meanings almost every second word. So for the most part, the 99% of what it needs to do, it doesn't need dates for that and a cutoff date or anything like that. For the 1% that .NET framework has changed between .NET 8 and 9, that's stuff that you'll probably want to check in your pull request and things like that. Does that answer your question?
Bob? Yep, thank you.
No worries. Yeah, so I refrain from asking it point questions where it might come back with the answer that's out of date. That's not how I use these models, right? But if you think about it, the model can figure out English that has got two words that mean different things, and that have got two different things that mean the same, different words that mean the same thing. If it can figure those things out, then source code must be the first thing that it will master, right? Because it's, I mean, how much does C# really change in 1 year? That will be my question. All right, other questions, guys and ladies? All right, well, I hope that was helpful for you. But yeah, 100%. That's...
thank you, Johan. It was very useful. I found it very interesting.
It's no problem. Yeah, it's the fact that I can go and assign a issue to it, and it'll go away and it'll spin up its own environment and fix the problem and create a pull request. I mean, what more can we ask for, right?
No, exactly.
All right. Well, folks, that's actually all I've got. So I have to say thank you from my side. Thanks for the opportunity. And I'm sorry, last month it was a bit of a mess from my side. I apologize for that, but hopefully I made up this month for that.